us now pray. O Almighty God, as we have come together to begin our meeting of the Assembly, we humbly beseech you to grant to all our members the light and guidance of your Holy Spirit, that we may wisely take counsel together and come to such decisions as shall promote your glory and the well-being of all our citizens in this our land, so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. You may be seated.
Oath of allegiance of a new member. Announcements by the presiding officer.
A pleasant good day to all members. This is a reminder to all members of this House. This is the people's house, and as such, the business of the House shall be treated as priority. In this House, on every fourth Thursday of the month, as prescribed within the standing orders of the Tobago House of Assembly, I have noticed, and the Assembly Secretariat has noticed as well, that information coming towards the House regarding the business of the people has been tardy. This would not be accepted any longer. If correspondence are forwarded to the Assembly Secretariat and are not in keeping with the standing orders of the Tobago House of Assembly, they will not be placed on the order paper and it would not be allowed. I remind you all and I caution you all again for us to be our brother's keeper in ensuring that the business of the people is conducted as efficiently and effectively as possible. And before I take my seat, let me inform this House that the leave request to be absent from today's sittings was submitted by Assemblyman Watson Duke, Assemblyman Natisha Charles Pantin, Assemblyman Niall George, Assemblyman Trevor James, Assemblyman Sutika Williams. The leaves have been granted.
Assembly bills sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. Petitions, papers.
Leader of Assembly business.
Tobago House of Assembly budget. Tobago House of Assembly monthly budget report, as of the end of January 2022.
Presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission, select committees. Questions to secretaries, questions for oral answers.
Leader of Assembly business.
Madam Presiding Officer, the Executive is prepared to answer the questions, but we are requesting that the questions be deferred to the next sitting due to the absence of both secretaries.
Questions are deferred to the next sitting due to the absence of secretaries from today's sitting.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries. Personal explanations. Introduction of bills. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the Assembly and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary. Public business. Executive Council business. Motion.
Members presenting today, please be reminded that you have 40 minutes speaking time. This goes to the secretary who is bringing the motion. To move, you have 40 minutes to move in which to move the motion and 30 minutes of speaking time to wrap up at the end of the debate. To the other members presented, you are given 30 minutes speaking time to present and an additional 10 minutes if requested by another member on your behalf. Secretary of the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Good afternoon to this august House. Good afternoon to those who are listening, who are viewing on the various media platforms. Good afternoon to my colleagues. I would like to start my presentation this afternoon, given that this is the first time I've risen to my feet to speak, to present in this term. I'd like to start by congratulating you, Madam Presiding Officer, for elevating to such an auspicious level. I would also like to say a special thank you to the electoral district of Belgarden Glamorgan that has gotten me to this point. I want to also thank the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly for his astute leadership, which has allowed us again to get to this point. And finally, I would like to thank my division, the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. This is a division that has been tasked with possibly the most difficult responsibilities over the last couple years. And I would like to thank each and every one of those who have worked over the last 2 years, those who've worked with me thus far, the 3 administrators that we've had since December, my Assistant Secretary, Mr. Sonny Craig, all of the heads of departments within that division, including those in the Tobago Regional Health Authority. Because one thing that we've learned over the last 2 years is that COVID-19 has identified for all of us every single crack that has been in our system. It identified the fact that many of us did not have medical security. It identified the fact that many of us did not have economic security. It identified the fact that many of us did not have the kind of social support that we thought we had. And in many instances, it caused many of our individuals, many of our families, many of our communities to almost break. It's been a difficult 2 years. It's been a difficult 2 years, and one that has identified many of the deficiencies within our social protection system. So I would like to start by describing or explaining the reason we decided to change the name of the division that I now lead to Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. I think the health and wellness parts we are used to. We understand what those means. But I think we need to spend a little bit of time thinking about what the concept of social protection is, because that is the foundation of the motion that I raise today, Madam Presiding Officer. Social protection really is a process or a series of components within a system that allows individuals, allows families, allows communities to withstand what are known as shocks. Usually when we think about shocks, we think about the negative things. COVID-19, the shocks, illness, the shocks, loss of employment, the shocks, death, the shocks, being forced to be confined in a home with individuals who may be your worst enemies, being forced to be in a space where you are afraid of your family members, the shocks, having our young people, our children in school out of school for that period, school for many of them was a place of safety. School for many of them was their safe haven. And for 2 years, we allowed them to be in a space where they may not have been safe. But shocks could also be positive things. Shocks is really any change in life. And I always give the example of a positive shock. You know, a young woman who just got married, a young woman who may have been raised in a Christian home, so, did not defile, quote unquote, herself. A young woman who may not have ever slept in the same bed with the man that she is now married to, only to realize on the night of her wedding that he snores. And she now realizes that she may never get another good night's rest because this man who she absolutely loves snores. Social protection is giving us all the technical capacity, giving us all the skills, giving us all the resources to ensure that we can withstand those shocks. The shocks that may be negative and the shocks that may be positive. Allowing us to say, hey, this is what happened. The breadwinner is no longer the breadwinner, but we could figure out what we need to do as a family because we were prepared. We now know that we have to go and learn a skill and start a new business. We are now prepared. That is what social protection is. And coming into this, understanding what social protection is, we at the division decided that we needed to do everything that we could do to make that happen. Now, if you look back at the campaign included the chief secretary at the end of practically every statement or every speech that he gave, spoke about Tobago being the greatest little island on this planet. And because we have to make Tobago the greatest little island on this planet, we have been doing a critical assessment of what it really takes to ensure that we do the kind of social protection that is necessary for our Tobago people. That assessment included listening to different groups of people. They come to me all the time. The workers within the division, the individuals who are clients within the division, individuals who are clients in other divisions, my colleagues, secretaries and assistant secretaries. Almost every day, one of them messages me and says, this individual who is my constituent needs help. So we've been listening to the frustrations of those who provide the service on one end and listening to the frustrations of those who receive the service. Can I just say that one of the things that my chief secretary said to us the other day, and well, we just tell each other secrets. He said, you see that form all let us use? That form too difficult. That form, all you have to change that form because that form is causing people to be frustrated. And it is little things like this that we have to sit down and critically look at to determine what is best for how we provide services. The social workers, they've been saying to me, Faith, we're tired. And we're tired. We're tired, try to do the work, and then it doesn't work. We are tired of trying to do the best that we can for our clients, but because we do not have a process, an official process that allows us to get together and allows us to speak to each other and allows us to really interact in a way that is meaningful for our clients, we feel that we are not providing the best service. We've been listening. The clients say to us, Dr. Faith, I come to social services, I fill out the form there, and then because we've recognized that we need help with housing, they send me down to Crown Point. I came to town with the last $10 that I had, and now they're sending me down to Crown Point. Or they are telling me that we do not have food cards at social services, social protection, so they're sending me back in town to finance, because that is where the short-term social service cards are housed. Dr. Faith, we came to that office because we needed help. And it feels like we have to beg for the help. It feels like we have to keep telling our sad story. It feels like we have to keep talking and we have to keep going and sitting down whole day because, well, thank God the dress code rules are now out the door. But we do not feel like we are getting the kind of help that we need.
Member, I don't know if it slipped me, but did you read the motion?
I did not.
Can you please do so?
Sure. The motion reads, whereas COVID-19 has caused significant socio-economic challenges for individuals, families, and communities in Tobago due to its designation as a pandemic and the public health regulations put in place to safeguard citizens, and whereas the Tobago House of Assembly, via the 5th Schedule of the THA Act, is responsible for social welfare, and whereas the mandate of this new THA executive is to make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet via sound policies and the execution of people-centered programs, be it resolved that the THA utilizes a whole-of-government approach to its distribution of social support to those in need in Tobago, using a case conferencing model to treat with all clients requesting psychosocial support at the various divisions, and be it further resolved that a committee of social support staff from each division be convened to create the policy that guides how this process is implemented by June 30th, 2022.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. So I've laid out the many concerns. I've laid the many questions. I've laid out the frustrations that many of our clients and our service providers have outlined to us. We are now in a position as the Executive Council of the Tobago House of Assembly to do something about it. We are now in a position to make a policy decision, which is why we come to this House at least once a month to debate the policies that are important to the people of Tobago. We are now in a position to do something about it. While having conversations, Madam Presiding Officer, with some of the individuals who provide social support within the divisions, one of the things they suggested, and is the crux, as they say, of this motion, is the idea of having all social support staff within the Tobago House of Assembly work as if the Tobago House of Assembly is a single entity and not silos doing their own thing. We have individuals within each of the divisions who provide some level of social support. It's obvious at the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. We provide the rental assistance. We provide food vouchers if those are available. We provide counseling. We provide housing if that is necessary. We provide those kinds of support. But if you are someone who needs help with building your house or constructing your house, you would then have to go to the division with responsibility for settlements. If you have a student who needs help getting uniform or books, you then have to go to the Division of Education. If you are entering the Tobago Regional Health Authority and for some reason you need a service that we cannot provide at the Tobago Regional Health Authority, you then need to be rerouted back to the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection to get that medical treatment, that medical support, or the financial support to allow you to get that medical treatment. We are now at the point where we've all recognized that it is critical for us to treat the Tobago House of Assembly as a single entity known as the Tobago House of Assembly, and therefore provide an opportunity for those who do the social support to come together and work together for the client. And we have to remember that that is why we're doing this, for the client, for the client. One of the things I think that we've been doing before is what is known as case coordination. And I think that is because the social support staff, the social workers and social work assistants and the various entities understand that it is important to communicate with each other, that it's important to share information with each other, to do some collaboration and to do that kind of thing. But that is not quite what we're talking about. We need to go a little further than just case coordination. And that is why this motion specifically asked us to use a case conferencing model to work together. And let me define what case conferencing is. It is a more formal, planned, and structured event which is separate from regular contact with the clients. Let me repeat that. It is a more formal, planned, and structured event that is separate from the regular contact we have with the clients. The goal of case conferencing is to provide holistic, coordinated, and integrated services across providers and to reduce duplication. Now, that is another thing that has come up quite a bit. We have clients, because they are trying their best to get as many services as they can, because they need it. They go social support shopping, for want of a better term. And they go to one division and then go to another division and they go to another division and they go to another division because they're really trying to get as much as they can out of the system. Now, what the case conferencing would allow us to do is for all of the entities within all of these divisions who are providing their various kinds of support to sit in a single room. Now, COVID has taught us that that room can be a virtual room, and to actually have careful consideration for the needs of the client. So what would that do? Someone walks into the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. Their information is collected at the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. An initial assessment is done at the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. And because I have confidence in the social workers and my social work assistants there, I know that when they do an assessment, it is a real thorough assessment. Now that they've done that assessment, they realize that even though the person who walked in came in saying they want food, because they've done a real assessment, they've recognized that, yes, they do need food, but just handing them a food card or just handing them a food voucher is not going to solve their problems. What we need to do is to look at the entire individual and figure out what is best for them. What is best for them may actually be working with settlements, because the only reason they are in need of food is because the house that they used to live in is in disrepair, so they are now forced to rent. And the rental amount is out of their reach. They may then realize that this person actually has a skill, a real skill that is marketable, a real skill that they can use to make money with. So they can direct them within the division to the REACH program, where we give small grants for individuals who want to start up businesses. But if they have a bigger business idea, we can then direct them to BDU, where they can get a larger grant to continue doing their business. They may realize that even though they came in and spoke about food, that they actually have children who are home who have not gone to school yet because they do not have the uniform, they do not have the school books, they do not have the school shoe, and instead of just sending them over to education, the case conferencing would allow them to speak to the various social workers, social support staff, to get what is needed for this particular client. Now, what that does is ensure that when we are done with the client has gained the capacity to no longer be a client. And I want you all to think about that a little bit. The aim of social support, the aim of social protection is to ensure that we get the client to a point where they no longer need to be clients. And if what we are doing does not get them to the point where they no longer need to be clients, what we are doing is to just tag them along, not building their capacity, not giving them the tools to give them the technical competence to no longer need our service. And that is why it is so important for us to use that case conferencing mechanism to ensure that when that client walks into any door, and that is critical, when that client walks into any door in any division, the assessment that they would get at that division would allow them to access the kind of services that would get them to the point of no longer needing social support, maybe a couple months later, a year later, would get them to that point because they've walked in one door. And the health professionals, the social support professionals are the ones that are sitting around the table saying, you know what? Miss so-and-so, this is her situation. I think she needs this, that, and the other. What do you think? Can we get her this, that, and the other? Can we get him this, that, and the other? To ensure that when that client is served, they are served to the best of our ability. The second whereas of the second resolution of the motion is one that allows, I think, the professionals to be the drivers of this process. They are the ones who've been on the ground doing it. They are the ones who understand what needs to be done. They are the ones who've gone to school and have the experience to do it. So what we're doing is asking them to sit together to work through the actual process, to work through the policy that they will then use to implement this case conferencing model in the future. And yes, because I'm the kind of person, and because we know that we need deadlines, and because we know that the social workers are competent, they can provide that policy by June 30th, because they already have it, I'm sure, right? Yes, already have it worked out. So, Madam Presiding Officer, the aim of this is simple in my mind. We have to figure out how to do what is best for our clients. The Tobago House of Assembly has the policy of this executive of the Tobago House of Assembly is one where we have spoken quite a bit about digitization. And we do know from chatting with those who provide the support that that is a critical part to being able to do this. Because one of the things we hear very frequently is that if the client comes in and the client puts in their name, address, date of birth, the number of children, they have the name of the children and so forth, those things don't change when they move from one division to the next. So if we have a central system where that kind of information could be put in so that when they are seeking support from the other divisions, the social support staff already have all of the background, they already have the basic information, that would help the process so much faster. So, Madam Presiding Officer, in my mind and in the mind of the Executive Council, the motion today is a simple one. It is one that puts the clients, it is one that puts the people of Tobago at the center of service provision. It is one that allows individuals to not have to go, as we say, begging cap in hand. It is one that would allow us to provide the kind of social support that we so critically need in a way that allows the client their dignity, in a way that allows the client to feel like we actually do love and care for them, and in a way that allows them to get the best support that they can get using our resources in the most effective and most efficient manner. And it is because of that, Madam Presiding Officer, that I am asking all of my colleagues, all of the members of this House, to support this very simple motion. I round up by reading the motion again. It says, whereas COVID-19 has caused significant socio-economic challenges for individuals, families, and communities in Tobago, due to its designation as a pandemic and the public health regulations put in place to safeguard citizens. And whereas the Tobago House of Assembly, via the 5th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, is responsible for social welfare. And whereas the mandate of this new THA executive is to make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet, via sound policies and the execution of people-centered programs, be it resolved that the THA utilize a whole-of-government approach to its distribution of social support to those in need in Tobago, using a case conferencing model to treat with all clients requesting psychosocial support at the various divisions. And be it further resolved that a committee of social support staff from each division be convened to create a policy that guides how this process is implemented by June 30th, 2020. Madam Presiding Officer, I so move.
Honorable members, the question proposed is whereas COVID-19 has caused significant socio-economic challenges for individuals, families, and communities in Tobago due to its designation as a pandemic and the public health regulations put in place to safeguard citizens, and whereas the Tobago House of Assembly, via this 5th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly Act is responsible for social welfare. And whereas the mandate of this new THA executive to make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet via sound policies and the execution of people-centered programs, be it resolved that this THA utilize a whole-of-government approach to its distribution of social support to those in need in Tobago, using a case conferencing model to treat with all clients requesting psychosocial support at the various divisions. And be it further resolved that a committee of social support staff from each division be convened to create the policy that guides this process is implemented by June 30th, 2022. Assemblyman, Member for Darrell Springwim, Mr. Morris, you may now join this motion, this debate.
I am joining debate now, Madam Presiding Officer.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Minority Councillor.
Permission to join the debate at this time.
Permission granted.
Madam Presiding Officer, thank you for the opportunity to join the debate at this time. And today in my discourse, I will seek to obtain responses that will help single mothers who desperately require assistance for their families from the Tobago House of Assembly to understand how this motion will affect them as they apply for assistance from the state. And from the point of view of citizens deserving of every kind of assistance that the THA has to offer, the minority will also seek to ensure that this motion does not cause increased bureaucracy, lengthen the application process, and therefore cause added stress and undue burden to the vulnerable and less fortunate in our society seeking assistance. And Madam Presiding Officer, providing that these issues are addressed and mitigated against, the minority is prepared to support this motion. And some of the issues or the questions that were prepared today by the minority, the Secretary of Health will have provided the answers for some of those questions. And I am happy that she brought some clarity. Because one of the things that we were seeking to determine is what the motion was intended to achieve. And she would have highlighted that this motion will deal with both the efficiency in the process as well as the duplication of the process. However, Madam Presiding Officer, there are a number of other questions that we would like to pose to the Secretary of Health. And in the fourth paragraph, it is indicated that a whole-of-government approach will be undertaken. And I am asking Madam Presiding Officer, I'm not sure if the Secretary would have addressed it, is if a client would have gone to one division, is it that the service that this client requires, do they have to go to other divisions to access the service? So say, for example, someone's house would have burnt down. Is it that the client seeking support from social services, they may also need some food card assistance? Is this client required to go to one place and they will access the services in one place? Or would the client be redirected to other agencies? Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, the term that is considered in terms of psychosocial support. And if we look at the textbook definition, it says psychosocial support, and I paraphrase, is defined as support given to help meet the mental, emotional, and social, as well as spiritual needs of individuals. Another author describes it as a broad term describing a range of services offered to those in pressing need. And this is designed to help individuals cope with serious illness or to alleviate distress following a disaster, such as the services, which may range from mental health, counseling, and group and spiritual therapy and other assistance. And based on this definition, Madam Presiding Officer, a client may presume that all the services that are offered by the Tobago House of Assembly may be considered psychosocial support. And in this regard, is it that every person or every client seeking social support from the Assembly is required to go through or required to case conference? So the motion proposes case conferencing to treat with all clients seeking psychosocial support. As a single parent seeking assistance from the state, does it mean that my application require case conferencing? And Madam Presiding Officer, because we are such a small, close-knit society, some clients would have an issue with confidentiality and sharing their information across several divisions and persons. So one of the things that the minority is also seeking to find out is how will confidentiality be managed while the case is conferenced. And sometimes, Madam Presiding Officer, some persons, because of varying reasons, may feel discouraged to seek assistance because they feel that everyone is in their business and everyone knows what is happening to them because of pride or varying reasons. So again, Madam Presiding Officer, we will seek to find out how will the case conferencing deal with confidentiality, and ethical concerns of the client. How will that be managed? And Madam Presiding Officer, another concern of the minority, we are seeking to get information on whether or not the client is required to give consent to have their application case conference. And if the applicant does not consent to if the client, does not consent for the application to be case conference, would that client be denied the support that they seek? Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, in the final paragraph of the motion, it states inter alia that a committee of social support staff from each division will be convened to create a policy. And we are seeking from the Secretary to define who are considered social support staff. Are they social workers, psychologists, business operations assistants? Who are the persons that will be involved in the formation of the policy? And before I conclude, I wish to reiterate that this minority supports whatever policies and programs proposed and implemented by the administration that will improve the lives and advance the development of the island. And therefore, the minority is prepared to support this motion once the pertinent questions are answered and receive the appropriate responses. And as a minority, we will continue to advocate on behalf of all of Tobago and in the interest of everyone seeking assistance so that they can fully understand how this policy will affect them, as well as ensure that the applicants are not disadvantaged. And another concern of the minority, Madam Presiding Officer, is how practical it is to implement this motion. How regular will meetings occur to case conference and application? What steps will be put in place for persons who need urgent assistance? And how will an emergency be managed or addressed under this proposed policy? Is it that persons in an emergency have to wait until the convening of a committee to case conference their application? So we are seeking to determine how will an emergency be managed or addressed under this proposed policy. And further, Madam Presiding Officer, the minority will also propose to put forward some recommendations for the consideration and the implementation of this policy. And one such recommendation is the review of the current grant offerings, keeping in mind the time value of money, and also considering the inflation rate of goods and services. And we are all aware that the value of $100 2 years ago is significantly less to $100 spent today. And therefore, reviewing the current grant structure may be necessary at this time. We are also seeking consideration to possibly have a range of grant qualifications, and the range can be from 500 to 5,000, but based on criteria that will be set up by the Executive Council and the policymakers. And another recommendation of the minority is to have an integrated system that can provide information on the various social support accessed by the client across divisions, so that at any one point in time, persons in authority can see what social services support has been accessed by a particular client. And Madam Presiding Officer, finally, in the execution of our duties, this minority will hold the Executive Council to account and will ensure transparency and good governance. And we want to ensure that what is good for Tobago is implemented, and we will support whatever policy that will bring relief to more persons, that is faster and transparent, and that will provide more effective and efficient relief to all deserving citizens. Madam Presiding Officer, I thank you for the opportunity to contribute.
Assemblyman Terence. Member for Bethel, Mr. Terence Baines, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the humbling privilege to lend my voice to this useful and decent motion. I would want to commend the Secretary for Health, Wellness and Social Protection for bringing this motion. I think it demonstrates a kind of situational sensitivity as we attempt to grapple with the challenges of optimizing our social support for people in these difficult days. May I also commend the Chief Secretary who leads from the front and has mandated us in this team to fix this Tobago space with the deliberate intent of actually making Tobago the best little island on the planet. All across the divisions, fixing work has been taking place, though we must admit that our enthusiasm, our expertise, and even the mandates that we all had could not have effectively prepared us for the magnitude of the work that we have been engaged in and must continue to engage. But we are up to the challenge, though. I think the people of Tobago has installed us into this political kingdom for such a time like this. Hence, we must do everything in our power to make life better for them. And none of us here could have adequately prepared for COVID-19 and its attendant fallout. And we have to be thankful for minds like the mover of the motion, Dr. Faith, and several others who have, as they say, take night and make day in alerting us and educating us and guiding us during one of the most difficult seasons in the history of our existence here in this place we call Tobago. But you know, despite all the good work that has been done in community development, youth and sport, and I suspect in all the other divisions, it is our reasoned view that the provisions of social services can improve, and a centralized model, which we now call case conferencing, is in fact ideal. Essentially, it is what I call a social service clearinghouse, a central place that will aid us in optimal social service delivery. I must admit, though, that, and I'm a little bit, I kind of was caught off guard, in all honesty, because in more recent times there have been some dull minds in the space, men that were intellectually and mentally delayed, in my view, who suggests that we have been doing nothing, we have done nothing in the 4 months to improve the lives of our people. Some have been so negative that if you put them in a dark room, they will develop into a photo. However, though, we shall illuminate the space with innovative and dynamic ideas to improve the standard of living in this place that we call Tobago. And you know, I have to confess, Madam Presiding Officer, I came today all prepared to bowl a full spell, because this is my maiden contribution in this August house. But I was caught a little bit off guard with the expeditious management of time by the mover of the motion and even by the minority side. So I think it may not be beautiful or even fashionable for me to be inordinately long, though the temptation is there. But suffice it to say, Madam Presiding Officer, a lot has been done in most of the divisions, and the data is there to prove it, and I don't want to go into too much over there in community development, especially. There is so much that has been done in vocational skills training to assist our people. You know, we've done a lot with virtual platforms training. We've done a lot with Y zones and virtual programs, Y camp and virtual virtual programs, retooling and revitalization as it relates to our community councils and so on. In the Department of Youth, you know, and I have to commend the Assistant Secretary, Mr. Wayne Clark, for the work he has been doing in the Department of Youth and Sport. He has been, yes, he has gone in there and taken the bull by his horns, and he's a worker and has been doing a considerable amount of work in trying to optimize that section of the division and get stuff done. You know, some 40% of the population, we are told, are young people that have been affected in adversely by COVID-19 and so on. And you know, when we look at some of the negative things, the attendance and participation of youth groups and other development activities, that has been affected because greater focus is now placed on survival rather than engaging in healthy activity. A number and type of programs which could be implemented due to the new digital modes that have to be used now has been one of the issues. The level of volunteerism as a result of the reduced wages and unemployment has been affected in a significant way. And we've done a lot of retraining of young people and so on. The point I'm trying to make, Madam Presiding Officer, is that we have spared no time in trying to do the best that we can under the circumstances to serve our communities. And you know, we have coming on stream what we call the Youth Information Management System, YIMS. As you know, we are fascinated by these acronyms. And it provides a digital platform for the registration of youth organizations and individual young persons in our youth registry database. The systems will allow the division to obtain information directly from our youth through surveys and assessments to inform programming, program planning, implementation, among other things. This database actually is now populated with some 845 young persons, and we have an ambitious goal to try and register all 24,000 plus young people in Tobago. And I think because of our drive and the various minds that we have in this new administration, and this is something that is doable. I mean, as well, we have been trying to provide assistance for several youth organizations and so on in Tobago. Just because of the time issue, I don't want to go into all that information, but the point I'm trying to make with this is to refute the claims of some who say that we have not been doing anything since we took office, since we came into these divisions last December. And so what I'm speaking of here, while I'm focusing on community development, I am sure that the same information can be found in all the divisions across this THA. In the Department of Sport, I think I really wanted to say this, that we have endeavored to improve health conditions for individuals through the introduction of physical activities in communities, to develop functioning facilities to assist with the development of high-performance athletes. The key focus is sport for development and the development of sport. And of course, we have some programs that we put in place to have a healthy and physically active Tobago, with the understanding of the benefits of being physically active. And this is important because just a few days ago, I was going into my office and there was the elevator malfunction. So I became very, very, I said, let me be scientific and try to speedily ascend the 3 floors. And by the time I got to the first flight, I was huffing and puffing. And I realized how unfit I am. And so the optimizing of sporting facilities and so on, and for us to be encouraged to engage in these activities is a matter of paramount importance to our population, notwithstanding that COVID-19 has caused many of us to be in our homes and so on, consuming an enormous amount of food. And many of us, our clothes retail costs has gone up exponentially. Many of our people, many of the ladies are in frustration when they look at their wardrobes now, because some of those fancy dresses and skirts and so on that normally would have fitted so nicely, they need to go and to visit the stores because of the consumption over that time they were in those enclosed spaces. So the issue of exercise and the provision of those things, the provision of facilities for that to happen is a matter that is very, very important. So I said all of this to say, Madam Presiding Officer, that in spite of all the things that we have been doing in the division, whether in community development in itself, in the USH department, in the youth department, in the sport department, and the several things that we have done, what we have decided, our reasoned conclusion is that we can and we must do more. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, I would just like to share some of the benefits of us implementing this system. And they are just as follows. Benefit number 1, when we implement this interesting and innovative system, which we now call the social, the conferencing, the convenience for clients seeking services, and Dr. Faith alluded to that a while ago. Now, one of the challenges that we are facing is people having to go in all these different places and so on. Even if they're doing social service shopping, this centralized clearinghouse is going to help us with convenience. I think, and that is a positive thing. The second thing is precision as it relates to the provision of the services. Precision. Because you'll have all the minds in one space, and all those cases will be treated and addressed by the experts in the space, and that, to me, will help to treat with some of the ills of not being able to address the issues and the concerns of people, sometimes even in a timely manner. The other thing is the minimizing of double dipping. we have to confess, no matter how difficult or how sad a situation, there are always going to be some individuals that try to take advantage of the situation. And we are finding that there are some tricksters in the system. Yes, there are some tricksters in the system. I don't know what it is, but there's a kind of mind-boggling, is a kind of offensive kind of greed that is in the society that bothers me. That there are people who are well off. There are people who can do better. But because a system is there, they find some way to trick themselves into the system, to take advantage of services because it is government. We have seen that we talked about the food card issue. There are people that have no business having food card. And the people that really need the service does not seem to have it. And so these are some of our concerns, that we will be able to minimize this business of double dipping. We also, another benefit is that there will be significant time reduction in case assessment and the provision of services. And this one I like. This is fun. Implementing this system, this case conferencing model, will be a useful object lesson for the possible introduction of a community secretariat in every district across Tobago. And let me explain that a little bit. One of the conversations that we've been having at the division is, and to try to treat with optimizing the usage of community centers and so on, is to make these places like a secretariat in the particular district, where individuals can go and get certain services. In other words, people like in Charlottesville and Lansom and these places come into Scarborough to get an affidavit done, to get some kind of legal document done, to those and to know about the different services that the THA offers. Instead, I had to go in Bacalet and then Shaw Park and then Crown Point and all of that. That these community centers can be like a central place, a secretariat, a central clearinghouse where people can get that kind of information. And I think that this model can be a good reference point for that. The next thing, Madam Presiding Officer, is the introduction of SOPs, and I learned this today. Standard operating procedures relating to the delivery of the service. And this must be a critical thing, because this provides an opportunity to eliminate deficiency in the monitoring and the evaluation of the regimes that we have related to the delivery of the services. And I think in most cases, there's a lack of the requisite tools to carry out the function, and that contributes to the deficiency. So hence, there is a need for SOPs that are user-friendly for the times that we now live in, with all the IT support and all the other scientific tools that are needed for such an initiative. And, of course, Madam Presiding Officer, the collective wisdom and intellect that can be found in a central space. All of us have been called, and there are some cases that when you are called, you have no clue, you have no point of reference, you don't know how to even begin to address those things. And I think that having these lettered minds in the same place will assist greatly in treating with some of these complex situations. And the final benefit, Madam Presiding Officer, that this particular system is consistent with international best practice as it relates to the provision of social services. And of course, it is married to our mandate in making Tobago, of course, the greatest little island on the planet. In summary, this case conferencing model is indicative of how this administration intends to deliver services to this place we call Tobago. This model speaks to convenience, it speaks to precision, it speaks to the minimizing of system abuse, time reduction to service delivery, relevant standard operating procedures or SOPs, and collective wisdom. I would like to say, Madam Presiding Officer, that I therefore support this motion wholeheartedly. And we in the Division of Community Development, Youth and Sport stand ready to play our role in the realization of this initiative. I thank you.
Member for Darrell-Springwim, you may now join the debate.
May I join the debate now, Madam Presiding Officer?
Member for Bethesda Lescoto, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to contribute to such a felicitous, critical, and indispensable motion brought by the member for Belgarden, Glamorgan, and Secretary of the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. Since its inception, the Tobago House of Assembly has provided special grants and services through its various divisions to the most vulnerable citizens of this island to enable them to traverse through difficult periods. However, the management of how these resources are distributed has always been a point of contention as it relates to the perception of equality and fairness. Owing to the fact that there has been numerous concerns expressed by the public about the possible misuse, abuse, and corruption, this administration has chosen to develop and implement a policy that reflects a holistic, interdivisional support system, be it social, psychosocial, or socioeconomic support. Madam Presiding Officer, at the Division of Education, Research, and Technology, which I now fondly call DIRTEC, there is a strong legacy of social support, and that occurs through food grants, school supply grants, and support for households that care for differently abled students. Financial assistance to students is a service made available by DIRTEC through the grants to necessitous students attending public schools. This vote has been provided for since 2016. It goes back to 2006 with an increase, but as indicated clearly in its name, the division seeks to assist needy students by supplying school-related items, which would equip students and give them an opportunity to perform at their best without disadvantage. This service is offered throughout the year, and once students are identified and their needs and assessment completed, these grants are provided for. In addition to this, DIRTEC provides counseling services to reduce dependency on the state. The aim of the school social worker is therefore to empower his or her client with knowledge that facilitates restoration through a transparent system of assessment, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Though we can boast of the many successes of this system, DIRTEC has an overall policy that guides procedures across the Tobago House of Assembly. But we need to now reduce duplication, increase efficiency, transparency, and of course, accountability. At the Division of Education, Research and Technology, a significant amount of money has been spent on financial assistance over the years, especially so with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this goes at an average of 550 families, 820 students, and $500,000 per year. In order to design an effective policy, there must therefore be empirical evidence as well as documented procedure. And at my division, the process of obtaining the clientele includes the following steps. Firstly, names are obtained based on recommendations by schools. Secondly, walk-ins are allowed to access gently used books, for example, stored within the Student Support Services Unit. I go further to say that these books have been sourced through parents who donate gently used books with the aim of assisting other families who may have missed the opportunity to be interviewed. Moving on, the Student Support Services Unit officers then conduct home visits to verify that the information provided is accurate. Applicants and referrals requesting the services are asked to provide the division with documents necessary to complete the needs assessment. The needs assessment is imperative in this process as they seek to, 1, identify needs, 2, recognize the resources available to the student, 3, understand how the student managed previously, and 4, identify and recommend how the resources available in the division could improve the standard of living and performance of the identified student. Apart from the needs assessment, though, the interview lends itself for the division through the school social worker. And this is important so that he or she can better understand what issues might be hampering the student's performance, whether academic or otherwise, thus providing additional support to the student and or family by the division, of course, if resources are available. In cases where the resources are not available internally, that is where external assistance is sought and the necessary referrals made to other divisions. This, of course, is in keeping with the professionalism of social workers, which seek to address the needs of its clientele holistically. Madam Presiding Officer, in 2020, at the onset of the pandemic, the Division of Education, Research and Technology received 921 food card requests and were able to assist families and children registered in schools across the island in that regard. These were received from the Division of Finance and the Economy. One of the major challenges was trying to avoid duplication of the services from the almost 2,000 names that were received in the system at large. Our Student Support Services Unit liaises with other agencies in an effort to avoid duplication, including the Social Welfare Office, the former Division of Finance and the Economy, and through area representatives. However, it must be noted that this process resulted in significant delays in the disbursement of the assistance to those in need. Owing to these shortcomings, this administration is now focused on delivery without duplication or delay. As we aim for the holistic social development, involvement of various divisions is therefore critical. And one of the areas to consider will, of course, be the type of support that is provided by each agency in order to eliminate duplication of services and to better invest public funds. Further to the aforementioned, Madam Presiding Officer, policy must include processes and procedures that improve the chances of the most vulnerable having access to services in real time, while at the same time reducing the opportunity for exploitation. There are several grants, for instance, that aid families with home and business development. Business development grants often span a wide range of fields such as agriculture, tourism, and construction. But many entrepreneurs have failed in their efforts due to lack of adequate training, mentorship, personal discipline, and of course, family support. We also cannot ignore the perception of grant funding being used in the past as a political tool to enable loyalists to drain the public purse, and we cannot afford to continue making those same mistakes. Our intentions are reflected by this groundbreaking policy, and we must now manage this process in such a manner as to bring true relief when needed and to support all Tobagoans in their quest to improve the quality of their lives. As Secretary of DIRTEC, this motion's resolution to use a whole-of-government approach in its distribution of social support to those in need in Tobago promotes the establishment of a multidisciplinary case management team. This team will be built from the various agencies that currently provide support and will be charged with, 1, reviewing what currently exists. For example, the agency's programs, procedures, database, and technology currently used. 2, identifying what does and does not work. Intake, procedure, assessment, documentation, for instance. 3, discussing accessibility to data, ease of access, and set time frame to receive or disperse information as it relates to this point. 4, qualifying those who will be needing assistance, whether we give a means test or no means test, for instance. 5, identifying decision makers as to who receives assistance and then make sure that it engenders fairness and minimizes bias. And 6, setting guidelines for information sharing, whether we need to protect privacy and maintain confidentiality in certain instances, and whether we need to share in one space so that the actual client does not have to move from building to building and get all the help they need in one particular space, whether physical or virtual. Madam Presiding Officer, as we aim to create this policy that guides how this process is to be implemented with a June 30th deadline in mind, allow me to now submit a case conferencing model that can be adopted. The strengths-based clinical case management model recognizes that the ultimate goal of a case manager goes beyond just accessing information. In this model, the case manager focuses on empowering clients and their families and focusing on creating client opportunities for growth, education, and skill development. Further, the strengths-based case management model recognizes the value of community service, family, and cross-agency partnerships. It encourages the client to build and nurture informal support networks alongside identifying and accessing formal community services and institutional resources. However, the strengths-based case management model steps away from the clientician's perspective on the client's needs. Instead, it encourages the client to take the lead in identifying his or her own needs, take control over the search for resources and services to address those needs, and view the community as a resource instead of a barrier to success. Strength-based clinical case management models involve outreach, clinical services, advocacy, and robust coordination between case managers and clients. Implementing a program based on this model requires that organizations such as the Tobago House of Assembly and agencies such as our divisions support case managers with a robust case management system that can track highly individualized services and capture complex data and metrics. Madam Presiding Officer, as I close, allow me to declare that the Division of Education, Research and Technology supports this timely motion. And I thank you again, Dr. Faith B. Israel, and the members of this August chamber for allowing me another opportunity to contribute to this motion. I thank you.
Assemblyman, Member for Darrell Spring Wing, Mr. Morris, you may now join this debate.
Madam Presiding Officer, let me firstly thank you for this opportunity to contribute to this debate, which for the layman looking in, really is a situation where we are coming to the House to approve a policy that is, that is not yet determined. And you know, in local parlance, we call that putting the cart before the horse. Because, you see, we have a situation here where we are discussing perhaps what might be, what might not, without really understanding what will be the final outcome. Because when you look at the first be it resolved, we have already concluded that the only approach that will work in this system is a case conferencing system without allowing the committee that we are proposing to do its work. Because really and truly, yes, there's merit in a case conference system and model, but a case conferencing system will not address all the issues that currently faces our social support delivery. Because think about it. What this case conferencing system and model is about, and I just want to perhaps share with my good friend from Bethel, New Grange, that it's not simply a centralized system, because you have persons working in their various units, but what you would have is the synergy. And the conferencing is where you bring all the minds together. So it's not really a central, because you said a central clearinghouse. But a central clearinghouse means there's one place where everybody resides and the issues are dealt together. So take, for example, someone have an emergency. Do you now case conference this emergency? This person needs help right now, right where they are. And they go to Division of Social Services, Social Protection, to get the support they need, the rental grant assistance. Because they don't live anywhere, they don't have a house to fix, so they don't need anything from settlements. Would we still call the Division of Settlements, call agriculture, call community development, and call all these people to case conference to get this support to this client? And while we're on this situation of case conferencing and emergencies, there are other issues that I can see arising out of this. There's the ethical concerns. Because when you're dealing, and I'm sure the Secretary of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection, who would have been my colleague in the past in the Division of Health, would recall that there are certain information sharing protection when it comes to medical information. So someone who has a mental health case, that person's information cannot just be arbitrarily shared across platforms. So are we going to conference that client? And how are we going to conference that client? Are we going to breach the medical ethical responsibilities that we all should observe? Madam Presiding Officer, we in the minority understand the impact of COVID-19. And you see, whereas we recognize the first preamble of the motion speaks to the damaging effects of COVID-19 on the population of Tobago, we also understand that this motion does not necessarily treat with the fundamental issues facing the average Tobagonian at this time. And what are those issues? Unemployment. Madam Presiding Officer, ad nauseum, I am inundated with persons coming to my electoral district office seeking employment. How does such a system help or improve the lives of the unemployed? How does this system really treat with the development needs of the Tobago economy so that we can employ more people? As we speak right now, I can give you a case of someone in my electoral district, a grandmother, child with special needs, renting, unemployed, went to access services at the division, and you know what she was told? That she cannot get help and she cannot access the rental assistance grant because she's unemployed. What kind of crazy policy is that? That the policy to give someone with a special needs child, unemployed, requiring a grant, that they have to be or were employed first, or they have to be underemployed to get the rental assistance grant. And these, for me, these are the issues we need to treat with first and foremost. And this is why I would be recommending, and I would recommend, that rather than we look at the theoretical approaches, let us look at real approaches. And perhaps we should be discussing here, even within this motion, creating a bipartisan committee to look at how we remodel and retool the social support grants within the Tobago House of Assembly to meet the current needs of the average Tobagonian post-COVID-19. Because these are the way that you really improve life. This is the way you would change life. It's not about having persons sit down in separate spaces and conferencing. Because think about it. Who is going to manage the process? Who is going to ensure that every officer is readily available at the same time to treat with the specific needs of the client coming for support? I know for a fact in the Division of Health, in the Division of Settlements, Mr. Pollard, how many social officers you have? I think you have two, one in the east and one in the west. How, if we are inundated with over 100 requests, let's say it's a natural disaster, and everybody requires support, how do we manage that all at the same time with only 2 officers in your department, 2 social support officers? Are we planning to hire more people? I mean, it sounds good in theory. We understand what you're trying to achieve, but is it practical? And as a minority, we would ask the questions. So as you go into your meeting, you go into your committee of social support personnel, you can have the considerations so that you can properly diagnose the issue. And while we talk about diagnosing issues, we have to be careful that we don't misdiagnose issues in the Tobago space, especially when it comes to social support. Because I'll tell you this, one of the experiences I have working within the Division of Health over the years is that the issue or the issues aren't so much that we don't have sufficient grants and that kind of thing. But one is funding and the other is delivery, increasing efficiency, moving away the bureaucracy, so that persons who really need the support can get the support quickly and on time. And I'm not too sure that this kind of approach, where we are now moving, where you have to really pull people together, or even if one person takes the information, but there has to be some kind of evaluation if we are not adding more time to the process. Because oftentimes when somebody leaves Charlottesville to come to town, it's because they have an urgent need. And when they go in that office, their expectation is, when I walk out of that place that I went to, my needs should be fulfilled. Will this system answer that kind of problem? And I know we want to do things differently. I know the passion of the secretary, but I would caution as we go forward that perhaps, we do some more consultation so we have a full understanding and appreciation, a holistic appreciation for the issues that we are trying to diagnose, so that when we diagnose the issues and when we apply the solutions, they are solutions that could in fact improve the lives of the persons and of the clients, of the end users of the product and the service. Madam Presiding Officer, I came here with a message because, when you read the context of the second whereas, and where it alludes to some policies, the people of Darrow Spring WIM has asked me to convey their concerns as to whether the song policies of the PDP applies to the people of Darrow Spring WIM. And it is in the context that we have a road in Spring Trace in Darrow Spring. That project commenced sometime in October, November. The project was halted after the successful outcome of the PDP, and to date that project has not recommenced. However, at the same time, the people of Darrow Spring WIM, they are seeing roads being paved in Boko, and have no issues with Sunny Days having his roads paved. But at the same time, it must not be one where we are neglecting one area while we are at the same time ensuring that we retreat with the other areas. So pay beaucoup. But all I'm asking, and all the people of Darrow Spring WIM is asking, is that you also pave and finish the job that was started in Spring Trace, Darrow Spring WIM. And jobs The young fellas, they're hearing, they're seeing, and they're hearing agri taking on people, they're hearing health taking on people, works taking on people, and they want to know if the people from Darrell Spring Wim end people too, because it doesn't seem like they can't get any job at all. Is this the 3 votes they're punishing the people for? I don't know. But I'm asking, as we develop the policies, the sound policies, let us develop them and apply them to all of Tobago fairly and equitably. Madam Presiding Officer, as I close, because I don't think I will have another opportunity to wish, first and foremost, my mother, God-fearing woman, and my beautiful wife, Happy Mother's Day. I want to extend Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers of Trinidad and Tobago and the world, including my good friend from Bethesda, Lekoto, her mother. I also want to wish her a Happy Mother's Day. I thank you.
Assemblyman Dr. Faith B. Israel, you may now wrap up this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I am walking to the lectern and wondering whether I should waste any of my time to respond to some of what was just said. Madam Presiding Officer, it is important for us to recognize that the Progressive Democratic Patriots has been in office since December. It is now April. And many of the issues that were just raised by the minority leader are not new issues. As a matter of fact, I am very, very happy that the goodly gentleman highlighted that policy about rental assistance, because that is a policy that we met in December. And that is a policy that was in place by the administration that he represents. So I am really happy you're the one who highlighted how that policy is. Maybe it's also important to identify the fact that the audit that is currently being done as it relates to some of these contracts that were given out just before election, Madam Presiding Officer, will highlight that many of those contractors were actually already paid. So if there is an issue with a road that is not finished, maybe a question needs to be directed somewhere else. but we will not speak about that, Madam Presiding Officer. The minority councillor asked several key questions, and I'm glad that she indicated that the minority council was willing to support the motion if these questions were answered. I am now a little bit concerned that the minority leader may not have known what the minority councillor was going to say. But I will answer the questions because they are important, pertinent questions. Thank you for those questions, minority councillor. The question about whether the client will go to one division and access all of the services is a one-stop shop kind of model that we hope to get to. But the reality is we need to be realistic with where we are now, and the steps that we need to take are steps that will be incremental as we go along. So the aim is to have the client walk into one division, and given the case conferencing mechanism that will be in place, so let's just say the client walks into social protection, and the client then needs housing-related support. Because that case conferencing is being done with the client may not need to go down to settlement to start the process, but may actually have their home assessed by the social worker without the client even going down to settlement to start the process, because the process has already started. Now, the reality is that we live in Trinidad and Tobago where you still need paper to do a lot of stuff. So there may be a situation where coming close to the end of the assessment, you may have to come and sign the final document or something at this specific division, but at least the process is way on the way and the client is being served. The question about psychosocial support, I'm not even sure what the question is. Psycho relating to the mind and the brain and so forth. Social relating to economics and so forth. Putting them together, psychosocial support. I am sure that most people understand what that means. It means if you're coming and you need food, rent, burial, counseling, all of those things, that is what we are talking about. The list of social support workers that we're talking about is one that is, we specifically use that term because we realize that within the various divisions, they use different words, they use different terms. So there are social workers in some division, there are probation officers in some divisions, there are therapeutic counselors in some divisions, there are guidance officers in some division. There are several different categories of people who provide psychosocial support. So we're using that term because we want to be all-encompassing. How regular will they meet? Now, this is something that I think the committee should be able to determine. Once a week, once a month, whatever it is, that is something that the committee can determine. And that goes to the next question. What do we mean by what happens when there is an emergency? Now, currently, the social support staff understand that when the client comes in, you do an assessment of the client, and that assessment of the client will then determine how quickly you need to provide the service. So obviously, if the people them house burn down, we know that you have to find somewhere for them to stay that night. But if the house end burn down, you know you may have a little bit of time to determine what is best and do what is best for the client. I have absolute confidence that the social workers and the social support staff that we have in Tobago know the difference and know how to do the assessment and know what kind of service is needed in an emergency versus a service that is needed urgently versus a service that is needed routinely. They have the technical capacity to do that assessment. That is why we are asking them to do that assessment. One of the questions that came up, and it's an important one, and it's one that's near and dear to my heart, is the issue of confidentiality. Confidentiality has been a sore point in Tobago. And it is important to understand that for us to be professionals, we have to take confidentiality seriously. There is a difference between anonymity and confidentiality, Madam Presiding Officer. Anonymity means that we do not know who the person is. It is a number that has been assigned. We don't know who that person is that we are treating with. That is somebody, a case that is anonymous. Confidentiality means that we understand that the information that this person has given us is near and dear to them and to us, and we must keep it in a particular way. We must not share it with individuals who do not have the right to know that information. Confidentiality is something that we are supposed to be dealing with continually, not just in case conferencing, but in every aspect. And to treat with confidentiality, we would have something known as informed consent. That term has two words in it. Informed meaning I have the information. Consent meaning I have told you that I am allowing you to share that information. Again, these are standard, Pastor Bain, standard operating procedures in social work. And it will apply in this situation. We come to this house, and maybe the minority leader, because we just spent 20 years of his party doing what they want, he is not familiar with the fact that the reason we come to this house at least once per month is to debate and agree on policy. The Tobago House of Assembly, this Tobago House of Assembly, is bringing to the people of Tobago an idea that was not birthed by me, an idea that came out of consultations with social support staff, with clients, who have all said this would really, really help us to get the services that our clients need to them quicker. That is how this came about. So we are here saying to the people of Tobago, this is what this THA is planning to do. Let us talk about the good of it, the bad of it, what we need to do, what we need to make better, what we need to improve, the questions, and I appreciate the questions, so that we can then go back to the Executive Council and then implement the policy that we agreed on here in the Assembly legislature. Another question that may not have been asked, I can't remember if it was asked or not, going back to the confidentiality issue, relates to whether a person's information can just be shared. And we spoke about informed consent. And the thing about informed consent is that it can be given and it can be taken away. And because a person has not given informed consent does not mean that they will not be served. They will just understand that the seamless process that we have put in place will not apply to them because they are choosing to not use that seamless process that has been put in place. It does not mean that person cannot jump in the car, jump on a bus and go down to settlements or go over to education and go over wherever they want to go. We are not saying that they can't do that. What we are saying is that we want to make it easier for you. So if you allow us to do the case conferencing, we will bring all of these people together. And bringing them together does not have to be in a physical space. It could be in a virtual space to discuss what is best for this person and have them get the best service possible. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I am happy that we were able to sit and do the kind of assessment that's necessary thus far. I am happy that having spoken to many of these social support workers, that we've been able to come to this point. And I am happy that most, if not all, of the members sitting here agree that our clients deserve nothing but the best. And because we agree that our clients deserve nothing but the best, we are asking each and every one of you to support this motion. This motion that speaks to us treating with the individual at the center of our service provision. Treating with the individual because they deserve to be treated with respect, with efficiency, with effectiveness. And I'm asking, Madam Presiding Officer, that all of us sitting around this horseshoe agrees with the motion that reads, whereas COVID-19 has caused significant socio-economic challenges for individuals, families, and communities in Tobago, due to its designation as a pandemic and the public health regulations put in place to safeguard citizens. And whereas the Tobago House of Assembly via the 5th schedule of the THA Act is responsible for social welfare. And whereas the mandate of this new THA executive is to make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet via sound policies and the execution of people-centered programs. Be it resolved that the THA utilize a whole-of-government approach to its distribution of social support to those in need in Tobago, using a case conferencing model to treat with all clients requesting psychosocial support at the various divisions. And be it further resolved that a committee of social support staff from each division be convened to create the policy that guides how this process is implemented by June 30th, 2022. Madam Presiding Officer, I so move.
Members, the question is now put. Whereas COVID-19 has caused significant socio-economic challenges for individuals, families, and communities in Tobago due to its designation as a pandemic and the public health regulations put in place to safeguard citizens, and whereas the Tobago House of Assembly via the 5th schedule of the THA Act is responsible for social welfare, and whereas the mandate of this new THA executive to make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet via sound policies and the execution of people-centered programs, be it resolved that the THA utilize a whole-of-government approach to its distribution of social support to those in need in Tobago, using a case conferencing model to treat with all clients requesting psychosocial support at various divisions. And be it further resolved that a committee of social support staff from each division be convened to create the policy that guides how this process is implemented by June 30th, 2022. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Motion for adjournment.
Leader of Assembly Business.
That this House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, the question is that this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. Good evening.